You're listening to your daily programming with the Rundown Live, your forecast into the future.
It's that time again. Time to relax and kick up your feet. Grab your favorite beverage and tune in to the Rundown Live, your forecast into the future.
To the Rundown Live, Milwaukee's independent news and talk radio. I am your host, Kristan T. Harris, bringing in sidekick Don Vi Jr. From the Free Thought Project, we have a great show lined up for you guys today. Join us on rumble.com/The Rundown Live. You can find us anywhere where podcasts are found, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, our syndication, KGRADB.com. We're here live after Clyde Lewis's Ground Zero nationally syndicated show. We're sandwiched between him and John B. Wells of Caravan to Midnight, former Coast to Coast AM host. What a horrible place to be. What a weird sandwich that is between John B. Wells and good old Clyde Lewis.
Seems like a great sandwich to me to be in. It's a perfect time spot to be in for our listeners, and great place for them to catch us live as well as the rerun in between. So I dig it. I also dig the intro song for today. I was asking backstage if that was Metallica, because I know it's not, but the dude's definitely channeling his inner James Hetfield.
He's like, I want to be James Hetfield so bad.
Right.
Except for he doesn't do that. He's always doing it. He always does that Metallica thing.
You can definitely tell through the accentuated yeah type.
Yeah. And that's actually The Showdown. The Showdown's a great band. They put out, I think, I found them a couple months ago, and they put down like a half dozen albums, and they're pretty solid albums. Music is such an important part to my day. I don't know. What do you guys listen to? Do you guys have something that pumps you up in the morning that you put on? Somebody's out there, they're like, I listen to Beethoven in the morning. That'll be Gennady Stoliarov, which, by the way, we should probably mention next week starts Futurist Week on the broadcast. We're going to have 2 weeks of top-notch futurist guests in the science community. They're dealing with everything from AI to transhumanism to robotics to synthetic biology to, brain to brain, brain to chip interfaces. And we have all the guests solidified for 2 weeks solid. That's crazy, guys. So we're going to need you guys to tune in. It'll be great. Don't go anywhere. This broadcast is always bringing information that you guys won't hear anywhere else. We are the forecast to your future, and we're here to program you with information. And what you guys do with it, that's completely up to you. By the way, this show is 100% listener funded. We need you guys to go to therundownlive.com. When you get a chance, support us. Either pick up a t-shirt that says The Rundown Live, like the one I got on, or pick up, support us. You can do a donation there, $2, $3. We are 100% listener funded. We're one of the few shows in Milwaukee that are like that, syndicated on KGRADB, Hudson Valley, New York, Salt Lake City, Utah, the Utahns there. And for everyone tuning in Milwaukee, this Sunday, we have a very special episode from 5 to 7 p.m. We'll be covering the Kenosha unrest. We'll be taking your phone calls. We have Corey Elijah that will be joining us. We have Nate DeBruin, both involved in the Kenosha unrest. And of course, yours truly. I had nothing to do with the Kenosha unrest. I wasn't even there. So I'm joking, but it'll be an interesting show. But Lacey in the chat says, I always listen to Joe Hisashi, who writes and performs the scores to Studio Ghibli films. Very good stuff, and other film scores. Hans Zimmer is also a beast. I don't know who either of those people are.
So Hans Zimmer, he's a very top-notch music producer for movies and video games. If you've ever seen films like Black Hawk Down, he did the score for Black Hawk Down. Some of the video games he's done the score for. What was that one game? Beyond Two Souls. He did the score for Beyond Two Souls. Willem Dafoe was also in that game. So he's very top-notch score producer for games and movies, TV shows, things of that nature. And then the producer for Studio Ghibli films. I mean, Ghibli is just top-notch in every aspect.
Well, right. I don't know who a lot of these individuals are in the music industry. There's so much that's going on. And this is a great segue, by the way. Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Lacey. And you guys can continue to put in the Rumble chat what you guys listen to get pumped up in the morning. I think Hollywood, which, by the way, Hollywood gets its name because the magic wand is made from the holly tree. If you don't know that, magic wands are made from the holly tree in the Druidic fashion, and that's why conductors use the magic wand is to control the orchestra, and Hollywood is the magic wand because we dance to their trends and the tune of their music and our daily life based on what they pump out there. And all the trends come from Hollywood, and kind of decides the fashion of the world, which is weird. It is weird kind of to me to think about that. But that's where Hollywood comes from. And weird things are coming out of there. We're going to be diving into some interesting things. We're going to be talking about the new movie Civil War. Like, what would cause a civil war in America? We keep seeing these news articles by the mainstream talking about civil war right around the corner. The left wants civil war. The right wants civil war. Everyone wants civil war. And there was a great movie that was going to be made, a TV series called Gray State, which was going to put out by David Crowley. And David Crowley died a sudden death, unfortunately. It was allegedly suicide and a double murder suicide. And it's interesting because he was just about to sign a huge deal, which would give Gray State a very, I would say, prophetic series. It would be much like A Thief in the Night, Image of the Beast, like on crack, dystopian future of civil war between our government and the local citizens who are fighting for freedom against a tyrannical government, right? And that's generally the foundation of Gray State. There's, I don't know if you guys, I think we played the video here. And since we have radio, I don't like to play because there's not a lot of dialogue in the preview. But the preview essentially shows that the cops warrantlessly going into people's homes. Everyone's surveilled. They put people's head in a guillotine. And the guy that is chopping the heads off is wearing a Masonic apron. Just a little spoiler there. So I don't know if he's saying that the Masons are New World Order controlling the world. You know all that conspiracy is blown out of the water a little bit. But yet there's some interesting, I would say truth to the utopianism. And Adam Weishaupt, obviously, he's the guy who was prominent for creating and dubbing the New World Order. And he was a Mason. And he was also involved in other secret societies. I believe it's the Swedenborg Lodges of Rosicrucianism, and as well as the Bavarian Illuminati, which was his own brainchild after the Jesuits denied him and rebuked him, and he was mad. He was mad about that. His ego was hurt. But Lacey says the Dark Knight of Batman, the Dark Knight. The music was also done by.
Yeah, that's right. How can I forget that? I love that movie.
But we're gonna go ahead and talk about this. Here's the trailer to Civil War.
Citizens of America, people of the Florida Alliance, and the Western forces of Texas and California will be welcomed back to these United States as soon as their illegal secessionist government is deposed.
You don't know what side they're fighting for.
Someone's trying to kill us. We are trying to kill them.
What's crazy to me, that reminds me a lot of Gray State. Just a lot of Gray State. First of all, a secession from the Union would never be illegal.
Right.
Because basically, some states, specifically Texas, agreed that they could secede whenever they would like. The problem is that's the reason why states don't secede, because I think a lot of them would have or could have throughout history, is the fact that the federal government gives so many tentacles of octopus arms, suction cupping the life of the local state and economy of the local state through federal grants, amongst other things. And what's weird is it works through something called UN Agenda 21. And this is worldwide. This is something that's not just happening here in America. Democrat Rosa Corey, who we talked about yesterday, used to join us and talk about Democrats against UN Agenda 21, which essentially was the United Nations lobbying our politicians on both sides to basically drain our local funds, which are used to pay law enforcement, patch the holes in the road. If you're wondering why we have potholes everywhere, take care of the parks, fund the local schools, amongst other things. And when they're broke, they pass all these federal grants for things like unconstitutional checkpoints where they do DNA swabs, amongst other things. And the cops are like, yeah, we got free money now. We can get some extra overtime in, and everyone's starving for money because there's no money in general funds because it's all used for sustainable development, putting bike paths down Capitol Avenue where people are going 80 miles an hour and no one rides a bike. That's dangerous as can be. That's the idea, is that you will they force this green agenda down your throat. And I'm not saying being green is bad. I'm not. I'm just saying behind the green mask, there's a big red juicy core. And that red is communism. It's called communitarianism. It's taking away your individual liberties and freedoms on a very minute scale. I equate it to very much so. Like if you take a frog and you throw it into a boiling pot, that frog's like, oh, hell no, I'm getting out. That's kind of what World War II is like, right? There's a lot of things going on. They're like, oh, hell no, they're burning people. Oh, we're getting over there. And oh, Pearl Harbor. Okay, we're getting involved in World War II, and we'll take care of this immediately. But essentially, what happens is the frog jumps up. But if you throw that frog in cold water and you slow it to a boil, he doesn't know he's being cooked. And that's kind of what we're at with UN Agenda 21. It's like a generational thing. Now they've moved it back to UN Agenda 2030. And I find it very peculiar that COVID happened in the year of Agenda 2021. And the idea is essentially globalization, establish global curriculum. So everyone has that digital IDs for the globe, right? Everyone mandated IDs, full on surveillance of everyone, and having a social credit score that's global. And that's their way of changing every interaction, which is a cordial, free thing that I can do with Don, to an interaction. And it will allow them to control behaviors for some people. And the ones that are loudmouth anarchists probably won't control them at all. They just won't be able to live in a cool area.
Yeah, essentially. And, as you mentioned, we're seeing those kind of things, those kind of policies unfold around the world. I know right now, particularly in some political circles or circles of political ideology, there's this, debate between the U.S. empire's unipolar world order, unipolar hegemony, and then there's the group of people thinking that, we, to defeat the New World Order, we need to establish a multipolarity, a multipolar hegemony. And many individuals such as myself have been pointing out that is yet another false dichotomy, pretty much the same as like the left versus the right or the Republican versus the Democrat. You can't, just essentially it's talking about trading out the unipolar world order led by the United States and pretty much all of its vassals for a multipolar world order led by the BRICS nations, Canada, China, Russia, China, things of that nature. And
Justin Trudeau can't tie his shoes. I just want to make that aware. I want our listeners to know he can't tie his shoes.
Yeah, but the point is, like a fantastic example is just two stories that I saw just earlier today. One saying that Russia is now implementing a nationwide ban on VPN, virtual private networks, and so infringing more on your privacy, and that they're also moving forward with the creation, the BRICS nations in general, so Russia, China, India, South Africa, and I don't remember, Brazil, are all collectively moving forward with the implementation of their own blockchain digital ID central bank digital currencies. So the people pushing for this multipolarity, it's going to be the BRICS nations, we're going to defeat the Western-led New World Order, and everything's going to be Gucci. No, it won't. It's literally just an Eastern-led New World Order, as was pointed out by, I think, Kit Knightley in a recent article for the Off Guardian, where they pointed out, no matter who you look at, whether you're looking at the Western nations led by the U.S. empire and its allies like the UK, or if you're looking at the Eastern nations and their conglomerates such as Iran, China, Russia, they're all seeming to implement much of these same policies: digital ID, digital cashless society, sort of implementing these same Agenda 2030 type of pillars and provisions. They're not actually fighting against the New World Order. They're more so just fighting for control of the New World Order.
Like that term, it's so nefarious. Like when you use the term New World Order, people immediately, I think they got that thought terminating cliche aspect where they just turn you off. And for the listeners out there, the weaponized term is New World Order. That's the word that they use. That's where like Joe Biden can use, and Barack Obama can use, and Bill Clinton can use, and George Bush can use, and people in Ukraine who say we fight for the New World Order, and Klaus Schwab can use, and the people at Bilderberg can use. But in reality, all the New World Order really is Adam Weishaupt utopianism under the guise of globalism, and some kind of full-blown atheistic communistic world where they will bring in some kind of beautiful like satanic Luciferianism based on what Albert Pike was saying with his 3 world wars ledger that he wrote to Giuseppe Mazzini in the 1800s.
Right.
And that was the original plan. That was the original plan. But now there's a lot of battle. There's a lot of people fighting for control of what we'll call the global economy, the global agenda. And that's what the United Nations and the New World Order really is. It's globalism. And it's not like globalism through, let's say, the UN is, let's say, a peacekeeping organization, right? But it's not peacekeeping through, diplomacy. It's peacekeeping through tyranny and war, it seems like.
Correct. Yeah, it's essentially the same thing as with NATO. They always talk about NATO as this, defensive sort of military alliance. And yet, if you actually look at the history of NATO, particularly with regard to what's, the proxy war between Russia and Ukraine right now, it's fairly obvious that NATO is actually a offensive military, hostile military alliance. And, we've talked about the history of all of that with regard to the Ukraine proxy war in general. But even breaking it down, just the ideology behind New World Order globalism, as you were explaining, just breaking it down a little simpler, this, as you said, it all goes back to the whole Adam Weishaupt utopianism. And even that is based off of an older ideology of just simply power hungry, because we go back, we look through history, we look at people like Genghis Khan, we look at people like Alexander the Great, or even Napoleon Bonaparte, Adolf Hitler, even though Hitler was also part of that whole, like New World Order constructionism. So that
Nimrod, the very first New World Order, dude. In fact, that's why they call it the New World Order, as Babylon was the old world order.
Well, correct. That's one interpretation. Again, as we've covered here, there's not actually a lot of evidence whether or not Nimrod was real or not, but I'm talking about real, provable people, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, those people who just wanted more power, more control, more territory. And, so it stretches back as far as human history, just this desire to want to gobble up and control everybody that sort of feeds into these desires that ultimately created the ideas based off of, that people like Adam Weishaupt and Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, and now, the Council Foreign Relations Bilderberg Trilateral Group sort of ideology where they're pushing for this more global empire, globalist world order. Let's just control everything and everyone sort of mentality.
Yeah. So you question whether or not Nimrod was real?
Yes,
that's interesting because the Masons consider him the founder of the craft of Freemasonry in their encyclopedia by Albert Mackey, and he's in a bunch of different religious texts, which doesn't mean he's legitimate, but it's as real as, let's say, Alexander the Great. We could say that, or as real as anybody else that people that we can't prove in our lifetime. There's statues.
Well, all I'm saying is that there's
hanging gardens, that kind of jazz.
Right. Well, all I'm saying is there's plenty of scholars and academics who very much say that there's not enough evidence to confirm whether or not, one way or the other. Not saying that he didn't.
Well, yeah, it's like King Solomon. We don't know whether his name is Solomon, which is son in 3 different languages. Which, it's funny that both Nimrod was a sun deity and Solomon breaks down into a sun deity, and that's what Masons worship, and it's also very Luciferian, which is exactly what Morals and Dogma talks about in Albert Pike's little, handbook to get to the 33rd degree, which I've read. It's all fascinating stuff. Like when we talk about the New World Order and the underbelly of secret societies, like by no means am I poo-pooing on Masons, or I'm just saying people in general. But the United Nations, the One World Government, the New World Order, the Paris Accord, all these things, these agendas that are financially driven for wealth and power, that's where these things really go. And the reason why we're talking about this is the fact that is, in my opinion, in part, one of the big things that would drive America to civil war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The idea that it's been long. Here's a book from, I have it right in front of me. This is from 1970. It's a news bulletin by Myron C. Fagan. Myron C. Fagan was the founder of the Cinema Guilds, Actors Guild in Hollywood, and he wrote a lot of these books because he was very knowledgeable. He's really involved in a lot of different things. I can't say I agree with everything, but in the 1960s and 70s, he was writing about a plot to transform the United States into a police state for the United Nations to establish a new world order in United Nations. And the idea is that you're going to have the United Nations, who's going to be supporting whatever the ultra leftist liberal plan is. And I think they're okay with the United States having succeeding states and forming their own countries, because then that's a part of the pie they can chunk up and carve up for themselves. Like, you remember back in the day, they had the FEMA region conspiracy that the United States is going to be cut into all these different FEMA regions. What FEMA region are you, caller? And people calling it, oh, I'm FEMA region 5, I'm FEMA region 3, because the whole FEMA camp thing was, remember, a conspiracy. There is no such thing as FEMA camps. Well, now, we send people there during COVID for vaccination and all these other jazz, and all those other interesting things. But the idea that there'd be a civil war, I think in part would be a result of a tyrannical government being extra repressive to the people, Don. And the closest I ever thought that we would get to something like this was during COVID. But everyone just kind of hung out there and they're like, oh, whatever, it's COVID. But if there was a chance that something like that would ever happen in America, because I'm not saying it ever will, I think that America is getting to a point where most people just roll over. And there might be a few people that are like, oh, I'm going to take up arms or whatever. But I think most people are followers. I think that's what we learned during COVID. And I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sold that there would be a civil war in America. But if there was, there's definitely enough people to overthrow our government.
Right. Yeah. So when it comes to that sort of thing, people, whether or not they'll take up arms or whether or not, they'll roll over or whatever. So I think about the power of the masses quite often in multiple different contexts, mainly when it comes to like what we do, our job as independent journalists, trying to wake people up and sort of shift the goalposts away from the tyrannical authoritarian agendas. And, sometimes it can get really defeating to look at how many people just fall for the nonsense and fall in line with the tyranny. But then I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes from one of our founding fathers. I believe it was Samuel Adams, either Samuel Adams or Thomas Paine. I'm pretty sure it was Samuel Adams, where he says that we do not need a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the hearts of men. And so that's what sort of keeps me going, is that recognition that while the majority of the population are followers, our job isn't necessarily to reach them, but to continue igniting those brush fires of freedom and liberty in the hearts and minds of people, to continue to shift the goalposts. And doing that enough, the majority of the masses who are followers will just simply follow along with whatever, the trend is. So it's to continue to empower that irate, tireless minority to shift the trend, and to a degree that the overall masses, the brainwashed masses, will just follow along, like, unfortunately, kind of like the sheep that they are. I hate using that terminology, but it's kind of applicable. And so when it comes to things, what I found interesting about the whole Civil War trailer for the movie, the concept of the movie, is that the two seceded territories are California and Texas, which are essentially the most diametrically opposed when it comes to political ideology. And so you have the super ultra leftist California, and then you have the super ultra right Texas, and they're working together. Yeah. And it's I don't know the full plot of the movie. Obviously, we haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it either.
Yes, it hasn't come out yet. It comes out in April. So I don't know if Texas and California are like they both seceded, but they're fighting against each other and the U.S. federal government, or they're working together. I don't know how that goes, but I just found that very interesting, that the two seceded parties that are at war with the U.S. government in the movie are the seceded government of California. And perhaps because it is a movie, they could have completely different political ideologies as they do in real life. California might be super left or super right, and Texas might be super left, and they might just both be super libertarian. Who the hell knows? I, again, don't know the plot, but I just found that to be quite interesting.
Well, I think if there was a, let's say, type of civil war, it'd be very guerrilla. It'd
Oh yeah,
be like people underground, just random acts of terrorism against the United Nations. I always said when you noticed terrorist attacks against the UN buildings and globalist buildings, bankers, International Bank, the Federal Reserve, places like that, then you know that things are starting to heat up. You know, these little like January 6th, like a lot of people had said, oh, well, January 6th is like that. That was kind of interesting. That was something that a lot of people might have felt revolutionary about at the time when it was happening. Now they're all in jail, but um, like that was something that I thought could have been an interesting moment where things could have gone very differently. What happens if January 6th, the Proud Boys or some of these organizations, the Oath Keepers and everyone else actually took over the Capitol building? I think all that would have happened was they would have sat there and there would have been maybe some kind of negotiations before eventually. I don't know what they would have done. I have no idea what they would have done because they wouldn't want to destroy that building. They wouldn't want to gone and guns blazing because we saw during the whole Bundy Ranch standoff over in Oregon when they commandeered that government building in protest, that they would have rather gotten, you know, Cliven Bundy or his son, excuse me, out there driving and trying to shoot him and take him out on the freeway. The feds would, rather than going into a government building and opening up fire.
yeah.
But I'm kind of curious to what would have happened, because that would have been something that might have inspired then a civil war in America.
Yeah, you know, it very well could have. I mean,
That's very close, right?
If we look at the context of the situation of what was going on January 6th, if they were able to seize the building, more than likely what they would have done is essentially just occupy it and hold it until there were guarantees that Trump would remain in office. And that's one of my biggest problems with the whole January 6th thing is I don't have a problem with people revolting against the government, but you actually have to revolt against the government in the name of freedom. Throwing a temper tantrum and occupying federal buildings to keep your orange daddy in power is actually
your slave master, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what it is.
It would be the equivalent of it's the exact equivalent of like if Antifa were to stage their January 6th and keep Joe Biden in power and screw the orange man, put him in prison, something like that.
Well, they don't like Joe Biden any more than anyone else, technically.
Right. Well, but you know what I mean, though. It's like the essentially the equivalent of that is if Antifa were stage a revolt and make AOC president or some shit. Who knows? But I mean, essentially the equivalent.
We might as well.
I mean, she's at least cognitively functioned, has cognitive functions rather than
like garbage disposals and, hanging out with whatever Alex Stein said about her.
Yeah.
Alex Stein.
It might be a bunch of nonsense coming out of her mouth, but at least she's nice to look at. I mean,
is that mansplaining? I don't know what that's called. Or is that called? Perhaps. I forgot what it's called. They have all these terms these days.
When we look at the president of the United States, they're all useless puppets anyway. They're pretty much all they are is just puppets to look at in any capacity.
Matter who they are. Said, see, I think a civil war would be most likely. Will be most likely if there's a giant plague, if there's another type of pandemic. I think it would escalate things. I think what also would escalate things is this election. I think this election is something that could inspire rogue cells of people to do wild things. If this election went down much like last election, where everyone went to bed and thought Trump won, and they woke up and they're like, well, we found all these votes, And I'm not saying that it was rigged at all. I'm just saying, all of a sudden all these votes came through way after midnight, which never happens before,
Never.
And just so happened that Joe Biden was the winner. He could have filled a social distancing circle, and Trump was filling stadiums of 20,000 people. And I guess we're supposed to accept that. So it is what it is, right? And this slave master, I don't think he knows where he is, and his son is making prawn, as we learned. He has his own little OnlyFans style account, and his laptop was obviously Russian fake news. Oh wait, no, it wasn't. Was it? All that other jazz. It's wild. The amount of propaganda and misinformation that's going on in the world is just crazy to me, Don. It just is. But this whole civil war thing, I think there's a couple different opportunities for this. I think when robots start coming on, and if they start taking over stuff, people are going to be like technophones, and they're going to start beating on the robots.
I mean, we already have certain instances. I mean, it's not necessarily in that same context, but we see people attacking like the autonomous food delivery robots, mainly just to like steal the food or whatever, but we have seen, like acts of things like that. There's that one guy that blew up, what was it? That Masonic statue down in Georgia, the Guidestones.
Yeah, the Georgia Guidestones, those ones, the New World Order statues put up by the Rosicrucians, who, by the way, are occultist versions of basically Gnostic magicians of the modern day Masonic lodges, I'll call them.
Right. Yeah. So like it's really fascinating because we were talking about this on just a few episodes ago, where I brought up there was that one interview with former Navy SEAL on Joe Rogan, who explained like the overwhelming majority of people who are like, for whatever reason, trying to amp it up and like, yeah, I'm ready for the shit to go down, lock and load, brother, type, like they have no idea what they're talking about, no idea what they're asking for, the kind of heinousness that would take place in that sort of environment. And I just find it interesting that we have, because A24 is a huge studio, and I mentioned this before the show, that one, I do think it's going to be a good movie because A24 is a great studio. They make great films.
Yeah.
But my very first thought, as soon as I saw the trailer, because I happened to see it randomly when I was watching YouTube one night, and literally the first thing that came to my mind is, that's predictive programming. It's not a coincidence that this kind of movie being made by this kind of a studio, so as being this big, being promoted this widely at this period in time, where there's so much polarization, where there's so much us versus them division, divide and conquer, brainwashing propaganda, it's not a coincidence. Like I don't know if they're trying to prime people for that, or if they're just trying to instill fear, or what it is, but I highly doubt that it's just a coincidence. Or it could be, if we were to take in a different direction and just go with the capitalist mindset, it could just be one of those, hey, there's a lot of tensions, there's a lot of polarization, it's a topic, let's make a movie about it and make a bunch of money off of it, and make a bunch of money off the fear and division. That could be the simplest, Occam's razor kind of, simplest explanation, being the most plausible scenario. But it's one of those things. It's certainly not a coincidence.
Well, yeah. And, a lot of people out there, well, why aren't you talking about the primaries? Why aren't you talking about the primaries? Everybody's talking about the primaries. So we should probably talk about some things that they're not talking about.
Yep.
How about the fact that we got some more Bohemian Grove bizarreness? Kid Rock was talking about the bizarreness. Yep. We know that they do some like mock Masonic-esque druidic mock child sacrifice called the Effigy of Care. The rich and elite go there. They piss and urinate in the woods. They pull their pants down their ankles, and they just drink beer all day, and they each have their own personal cooks. That there's actually lawsuits against the Bohemian Grove for how the employees are treated during the 2-week getaway where the elite get there. The Manhattan Project was founded there. Ronald Reagan may have been selected there. A lot of these presidents, Nixon was there, Bush was there. A lot of these elitists have gone there. But pro boxer Ryan Garcia came out, and this is by Adon Salazar. Well, let's put this out there. Adon Salazar is a good reporter, good journalist. Every news outlet, every media outlet has reporters that do a wonderful job, and this guy does a good job. He's been around for a long time. Adon Salazar is over at InfoWars, and a lot of people think this is controversial, but Alex Jones broke the Bohemian Grove thing. So the reason why we're going to talk about this, because nobody knows it better than him, and I know that there's a lot of craziness going on in the world surrounding Alex. But Alex is the guy who snuck into Bohemian Grove, blew the doors wide open, right? And quite honestly, one or two things that he said get taken out of context quite often, and the mainstream media they hate the dude. I don't know. I've never met I've seen a guy out there that the mainstream media hates more than Alex Jones. And that kind of makes me interested. What is it that Alex is saying? What is it that he's doing that they hate him so much? And I found it interesting that this article is on InfoWars talking about Bohemian Grove and a guy named Ryan Garcia. Do you know who Ryan Garcia is?
I've heard the name. I know he's a boxer, but beyond that, I pretty much know nothing about him.
Pro boxer Ryan Garcia claims he was forced to watch satanic pedophile elites rape children. Guess where?
At the Grove.
At the Grove. All right. Now, these are kind of outlandish claims. These are like crazy claims. However, it is known that prostitutes are flown in from all over the world to be in the area for the Grove, male and female. So why wouldn't elites who like underage, what we will call children, underage women and men, why wouldn't they have them carted in? I wonder if Jeffrey Epstein was making a killing during Bohemian Grove weekend.
Yeah, so that's a thought that I've actually been having a lot very recently since we've been talking about Bohemian Grove for over the past couple of weeks. It's been coming up in the news, in addition to some of the Epstein stuff, there needs to be, in my opinion, a focused investigation of like the years when Epstein was most active. So let's say late 90s to early mid 2000s, maybe 2010s, but especially like pre 2008, like before the big sweetheart deal, and then probably pushing to like 2012, something like that. But an investigation into the individuals to see who Epstein was closely tied to within that time period, and see if they align with active members of Bohemian Grove from that time period. See where there's the overlap. See if we can determine whether or not, because it's obviously quite plausible that the Epstein network would be tied in with the Grovers.
Well, at least some people with Bohemian Grove.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. And so I'm thinking that there should be more of a focus on trying to determine to what degree, or even if Jeffrey himself was there, it's certainly not beyond the scope of imagination that he would probably come in under dark of night, and hang out, do his thing with all those people. I mean, hell, he was tight with Clinton. He was really tight with Clinton. He went to the damn White House over 30 times, I think. And, Clinton was one of those guys, at
eating
the Grove,
pizza by the slice, I bet. Maybe hanging out with the Podestas and everyone else.
Yeah. And we know that the Clintons in general, particularly Hillary, she's into the whole, sort of occultic kind of black magic, spirit cooking, even going back to their time as governor. There was that one Secret Service agent that worked for them who talked about in a book about, some of the rituals that Hillary would participate in when she was the first lady of Arkansas during Bill's tenure as governor, with the seances and Ouija board type shit. So we know that she's into it. We know that Bill's gone to Bohemian Grove. We know that Bill's tight with Epstein. So, I think it's only reasonable to determine how many or just how much the Grove was involved with that whole network.
So I want our listeners to be aware that there's going to be some vulgar language here. So if you guys have your children in the room, you might want to earmuff them. But this is the conversation between Ryan Garcia and a very controversial guy named Andrew Tate, and which Don and I aren't really a big fan of Andrew Tate. At least I'm not. I don't know
Tate's
what you do.
Clown. I hate Tate. He's well, hate's a strong word. I'll say he's a clown.
Dang, Don, you all angry. You angry over there.
I hate his ideas. Him as a person, he's just a clown. He's not worthy of being hated. He's just an idiot and a clown.
Yeah, he's definitely championed the masculine, like arrogant dude type mentality. Just like the lead singer Dashboard Confessional looked tough, but he's soft and emo in the inside, He had that look to him. And Andrew Tate is obviously obnoxious. He has done some things where he's taken advantage. Well, I guess, if there's contracts, I don't know all the specifics. So I'm not going to dive into it. But this is a conversation between boxing pro boxer Ryan Garcia and Andrew Tate, who a lot of people, they've been watching lately, and I don't know why. But here we go. And we are gonna play.
Proof, bro. I don't give a fuck.
I think it pauses when you try to like full screen it.
Bro, I fucking will show you every fucking video you could ever fucking believe. Bohemian Grove is real. They fucking tied me down and they made me fucking watch, dog. I absolutely don't give a fuck anymore. Yes, I fucking lost it. They're raping little kids.
He doesn't want to take us all, so let's go. Come on, Ryan. He doesn't want to take us. Come on,
fuck this guy. Bro, fuck this dude, dude.
Who?
Bro, you know the higher elites, bro. You already know who they are, bro.
No, you know what?
You know the path you're going down is dangerous, my friend.
I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. They can't touch me. I'm a god.
Well, That's the first point of contention, because I care about you a lot, and I can assure you from my own personal experience that they can touch you, which is the worst part
No,
about
they
it.
can't, bro. All right, so come touch me, you fucking bitch.
You have proof of these things. You have proof of this on your phone?
Yes, of course I do. The fuck you talking about? Of course. If Alex could get a fucking video from the Bohemian Grove, of course I could.
Well, I have to be careful what I say because I'm in the middle of a judicial process right now.
You want me to get you out of it? I can help.
Well, bro, my door gets kicked in if I say what I'm thinking.
Okay, well, I can help you get out of it if you want. I know people.
Oh. Tell everyone at home then. Start from the beginning. When did this happen? Where did this happen? What exactly did you see? Why have you tweeted the things you've tweeted? Let people at home understand you a little bit.
Because I don't give a fuck, bro. They raped me, right? I was 2 years old. They raped me. I have proof of that too. That's where it all started, bro. Okay?
You do know there's going to be certain people who believe, and I'm Ryan, you know I like you. We've been speaking for years. You know there's going to be people who believe you're just saying this because you've, I don't know, had a mental breakdown or taken drugs and you're repeating some of the things you've said on the internet. And so they're going to not believe you unless you come at it very coherently.
Andrew, I'll go to fucking Romania and take a drug test in front of your face.
Bro, you don't want to come here. you don't need Romanian jail. It's bad for your fight camp. But I'm just asking, like, you're gonna have to tell a far more coherent story from start to finish for people to truly understand that what you're saying happened is what you saw, and that this is not some sort of episode or anything else. This is my advice to you as a brother. I'm trying to make it, if you want people to believe you, you're going to have to come along and explain from the absolute beginning exactly how it happened, who was involved, how you got there, what car you were in, where you were standing, everything.
Of course they're going to want that, and I have all the information possible.
Okay, so when you're releasing it? How are you releasing it? Or are you keeping it for yourself? Because it looks like you don't want to keep it for yourself.
I don't. At the right time, I'm going to release all of it. But at the right time, I'm going to do it. They're already calling me to tell me to stop. I don't give a fuck, dude. I've already had a meeting with them. I'm going to let you sit with that, Andrew.
All right, bro. Well, I want you to know that either way, I'm praying for you. And I hope that...
Thank you, bro.
You know, and I mean,
I don't give a fuck, bro. And Alex Jones has been saying the same shit, and they try to the only reason they can't stop me because they listen to the devil. I listen to God. God gave me authority. It's over for everybody, bro.
And that,
yo, Andrew.
Hey, bro. All right, talk to us.
Bro, I don't
and
give
that
a
was
fuck, bro.
essentially Ryan Garcia talking to Andrew Tate about his experience at Bohemian Grove. And I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of all that. I don't. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I don't know anything about Ryan Garcia. You know, we've said that before. All I know about him is his name and the fact that he's a boxer. I know nothing about his credibility, his past experiences.
He's a lightweight champion.
His anything, right? I don't know anything about his personal, like his history, if there's been a history of drug abuse or alcohol or whatever, or if there's been a history of abuse in his family or ties to the Grove, or that could corroborate or disprove what he's saying. I simply don't know. I certainly hope that the things he is claiming didn't happen to him, because no one, adult or child, deserves to go through that. And if they did happen to him, then I do certainly hope that he's able to get the proof out and at least attempt to hold these individuals responsible, because we know it's so damn hard to actually hold the predator class responsible for anything. I mean, just, we can look at the Epstein situation and we literally have names and none of them are in prison. But at the very least, no, if that has happened to him, I hope that he is able to attempt to try to get justice.
He must be psychologically disturbed too on top of
it.
So listen, Don, one of the things that stood out to me as being the only reporter that was at the Ghislaine Maxwell Jeffrey Epstein trial for 5 weeks, the only person there every day. One of the things I learned about was grooming. And what they do is they get these children at a young age, and that's when the abuse starts.
Yeah.
So, and then they reward them for being such a good little sex slave. They get prominent acting positions. The first witness at the Epstein trial was the star of Days of Our Lives. Maybe a coincidence. I don't know. Epstein would help people get prominent acting and modeling job. He knew Les Wexner, right? He'd go to these gifted camps to, there and do scouting for young girls in which he could seduce him and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right.
And then this guy ends up being a top boxer, and obviously there's a lot of skill involved, but that makes me at least think, maybe there's a small chance.
Yeah, and there is one thing I want to point out, just for the listeners and viewers and whatnot, just because I know someone would try to make this argument, so I just want to refute it off bat. Tate is essentially irrelevant. It doesn't matter who Mr. Garcia was telling this to, whether it's Andrew Tate or whether it's us or whether it's Alex Jones or whether it's CNN or whomever. The fact that he was telling it to Tate is essentially irrelevant, but people are going to take that and say, oh, well, because he was talking to Andrew Tate and Andrew Tate's such a clown, which he is, that it should not take Garcia seriously at all. And that's simply a logical fallacy.
Well, that's true, because
listen to the information. Correct. Yeah. So we should just take the information as it is. And it's essentially, as you and I both say, it doesn't really matter where the information is coming from. What matters is whether or not you prove it or corroborate it. And so,
well, is it just hearsay, and is he just trying to get like clout or get, is he a drama queen? And because we've heard these stories before, about Bohemian Grove before they've even, this is like Epstein style. We've heard the rumors, we've heard the stories, we've known people have attempted to, I know people personally have tried to sneak in or have, attempted to get information about the Bohemian Grove. So how much of this could be accurate? How much of it is just trash? I'm not sure, Don, but I can tell you that the more stories we hear about Bohemian Grove, the more we're hearing that it's exactly like Alex Jones claimed it to be.
Right. Which is, in and of itself, one, demonstrable of the fantastic work that Alex did during that time, just the feat that he was able to pull off, along with the other man who joined him as Mike Hansen. I remember Mike Hansen. I don't remember the other guy's name.
The British dude, right? He had a really awesome British accent.
Yeah. So, just first of all, hats off to them just for that work. I mean, I know they've gotten, flowers for decades, since doing that, but it's such a, without them, we wouldn't even be having this conversation because we might still not even know what the Bohemian Grove is. Yeah. But the more, there was an article that I saw was published, and I think even Adon Salazar might have also written it. And I know I republished it on the rundownlive.com probably a month or so ago, that there was another individual, a YouTuber, don't remember their name, also snuck into Bohemian Grove during the off season, I think this past summer.
Well, I think anyone can drive right up in the off season.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's still security, like in part of his video, like he's, going through the woods and ducking behind bushes to avoid like just, probably some security guards walking the area, but he was able to go around and he went through like the mess hall. He got video of like the interior kitchen, like of course everything's boxed up and all the pots and pans are put away because it's the off season. And he even went to where the Big Owl, where they hold the cremation of care ceremony, and took some video of it over the lake. And then I think he had to run because like there was a security coming to check because he heard something. But yeah, it's just everything that we continue to learn about the Grove corroborates a lot of what Alex and Mike said in, because Mike Hansen wrote a book called Inside Bohemian Grove, as well as a documentary that went along.
Yeah, Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a documentary that went along with it. And it just continues to seem to corroborate a lot of this sort of information. And it only makes me wonder, how long until we finally get some sort of accountability for a lot of these people, because like now it seems like I constantly have to remind people, not even constantly, it used to be constantly, but I've sort of backed off on it now because it's so damn tiring, that when, especially in election years, these conversations come up, oh, we got to get the right Republican, oh, we got to get the right Democrat. And I'm like, you people do realize that all of these mofos are like Grove members, or they know about Grove members. Even if they don't participate themselves, they know it exists because it's basically a huge open secret that all of these people know that, so their colleagues are raping children. All of these people know that their colleagues are going to perform these dark occult rituals at this, giant owl statue in the middle of the redwoods. Like,
do mock child sacrifices. We don't know if they're really doing these things. It's but the point being is like,
So when it comes to this whole like, oh, we got to get the right politician in office, left, right, Democrat, Republican, it's like it's such a false dichotomy, even just beyond the basic premise of just this fake paradigm. It's like all of these people are tied to some of the most grotesque activity imaginable, and they've still got people brainwashed into talking about who's going to be my overlord, tread on me harder, daddy type bullshit. I just had to rant a little bit.
No, like it's weird though, because we were always told that this was going on in the 70s and 80s at Bohemian Grove, and no one believed it until Alex snuck in and got video. And now it's like everything has been focused on attacking him because Alex has exposed billionaires and corrupt multinational corporatists and confronted them face to face, to the point where he got the attention, and his whole career has been, they've attempted to assassinate his career per se. You know, they've digitally assassinated Alex Jones, but isn't it interesting? He's alive again. He's back on Twitter. He's still getting millions and millions and millions of listeners, 12, 13. It's nowhere up to the, like at one point, I think he had like 60 or 70 million listeners or visitors a day on their website. That's crazy numbers. That's twice the Super Bowl numbers of people going to Alex Jones's InfoWars, and they didn't know what to do. It's anti-propaganda, and that's a lot of a lot of people who were getting the truth, and it slowly stemmed from there. Now you hear the mainstream media, everything's a psyop. Oh, it's a psyop. It's a psyop. It's a psyop. It's a psyop. Everything's a psyop now. They're all trying, especially on the conservative aspect of things.
Right. Yeah. I think, that plays into the whole, a lot. I think I would call it burnout in a way, just with the way that we've been inundated with so much information. I know some people refer to it essentially as like black pilled, like where, in it, like, so you go from red pilled, from like being awake, to just black pilled, where it's like you're just so saturated and inundated with this awful information. Like, these are the people that engineered 9/11. These are the people that engineered wars. They kill millions of people a year. They're raping children. They're participating in occultic rituals and just doing all of this just heinous, atrocious activity and seemingly getting away with it. And you just get really defeated and nihilistic and just sort of, everything sucks. We might as well just wait for the end times. It's sort of black.
They're making deep bunkers underground and billion-dollar bunkers.
Right. And that's why I really think, like, the counter to that is I think they refer to it as white pilled, obviously, where it's like, still trying to maintain some sort of like, optimistic outlooks on things, more focused towards solutions, focused towards actually helping humanity build parallels, build alternative systems, move away from the authoritarianism and just the awful things that are going on in the world. And which is partially why I focus a lot of, my work on trying to spread that message and trying, a little bit harder to, just remind people, like, we have to put love in the world. We have to put kindness into the world. We have to, if we want the world to be more compassionate, then we have to be more compassionate and put that out there. Because at the end of the day, and, a couple years ago, I wrote a poem about this. It's somewhere.
You write poems? Hold on a second.
Yeah, I'm actually a published poet. I became a published poet at 9 years old, bro. I'm in a book called A Collection of Young Poets. We had to write a poetry about autumn. We had to write a poem about autumn in my 4th grade class. My teacher read it, and she loved it so much that she submitted it to a national contest, and I won for my district. And then when the book came out, my poem was published in it. So yeah, I've been writing poetry since I was a little kid. The point is, I wrote a poem a couple years ago, basically about this sort of subject, about people rising up. And at the end of the poem, because I don't have it with me, so I can't tell you verbatim, but at the end of it, I make the point and I say, the one thing that tyrants are most afraid of is what they're most incapable of: love. Tyrants are incapable of love. They have so much greed and lust and power lust has taken them over to the point where they're literally incapable of love. And that's why love and kindness and compassion is our greatest weapon to defeat them.
They don't know what to do with it.
Right.
That's why they hate the idea of Yeshua and Jesus Christ, because he was all about love. 100% love. Is all love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
love
and that's
everyone.
why. Yeah, and and that's why over the centuries they've twisted and perverted his message and taken to church and did everything that they did to sort of to move away from that. As we were talking about a couple episodes ago with the whole, the esoteric truth of religion versus the whole institution that was corrupted by merging church and state in the Roman Empire. It's because they want to move away from that ideology of love and kindness and togetherness that can very much 100% go towards helping us heal the planet and create a better humanity.
Don, what I really want to see is if there's a civil war, I hope that whoever is doing the war has these jetpacks. Because like war is getting so sophisticated. You gotta imagine that they have like 1,000 of these lined up for we remember Jetpack Man. People were like, planes were like, there's a dude on a jetpack flying by the airplane and it's hovering over the LAX airport. Nobody really knows what it is or what it was. But in Dubai, I guess they had Iron Man pilots race in jet suits against the backdrop of Dubai skyscrapers. Now, this is it right here. We're going to put it on the screen. And like, this is crazy. Look at it. This is like Iron Man.
Yeah.
I'm not even lying. For the listeners out there on KGRADB, imagine a bunch of people in Iron Man-esque suits just flying around in jetpacks across Dubai. Like, you don't think the military's got their hands on this? This is what the Civil War is going to be like. It'll be like Iron Man, and then we're going to have animal-human hybrids. It's going to be X-Men. That's the Civil War of 20 years from now. We're going to just...
What's crazy to me is because the first time I saw like actual functional jetpacks like that was a couple years ago. It was something that I think it was the UK Royal Marines posted a video about it. They were like experimentally training with it. Not that they were like fielding it with their soldiers, but like, they're doing like experimental training operations. And from what I remember is like there was a few more Royal Marines on a boat with a jetpack, and then like 2 of them took off and flew towards another boat that they were pursuing and then touched down. Like, that was a couple years ago, and my mind was just blown, right? Because when you think about the very first time I was introduced to a concept of a jetpack, I'm kind of dating myself here, was in the early 2000s when I was playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And if you remember San Andreas on the PS2, you had the cheat code. You type in the cheat code, up, down, left, whatever, circle, something.
Down, left,
yeah,
right, left, right.
And you get the jetpack, and then you fly around, you're doing all the crazy stuff on the jetpack. And so I just thought, like, man, that stuff is so cool. And then fast forward like 20 years, and I see that post from the Royal Marines, from the British Royal Marines with the jetpacks, and I'm like, yo, that's like, we're here, like we're really here, man.
Well, tell me you can't just put some like grenade launchers or machine guns on those and be like da, 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 and just dropping stuff. It says accidents with jet suits can be deadly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
No, those look safe. These guys are only floating 30, 40 feet in the air, 20 feet in the air, 10 feet in the air. But like, I don't know, man. That looks like a fun extreme sport.
Oh, 100%. Like, imagine
the revolution will be fought with jetpacks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it will not be televised.
Oh, yeah. It definitely will not be televised.
So you're sitting there having a civil war and a whole bunch of people on jetpacks fly, and I'm like, here's my gun. I'm going home.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's like, you know what? White flag. I'm good.
I'm out of here. The jetpack guys won.
Oh, no.
Look at it. That's so cool, though. Like, would you fly in jetpacks if they had them for you? I wonder how fast they go.
So long as I knew they were safe. Like, you'd have to go through a lot of safety testing.
That's like skiing down straight downhill. There's a chance that if you wipe out, that's game over. There's no unlimited lives like in Contra where you just type in a code and you can do this. This is it. I wonder how high up they go. I wonder if you can just like keep going up and up and up, and you can be like, I'm gonna go around the sun in my jetpack.
You'll have an Icarus moment. You go to the sun, you're crashing down. for my Greek mythology nerds.
Tell me that's not cool though. Like, yeah. I don't know, man. That looks interesting, looks wild, and it looks cool. It definitely does. Oh, yeah. I wonder how much arm strength it takes to kind of fly those things. They're very, I would say, Iron Man-esque.
Oh yeah, very much so. It's not only arm strength, but also just skill in general. I can imagine they're probably difficult to balance.
You're going on a date. You're like, don't take the motorcycle. Flying in on a jetpack. He's like, I'm here, and you're like, he's like hovering down. You're like hovering 3 feet over the ground. You're like, okay, hop on in. Hold my back. I'm flying up. The girl's holding on to you, like face going nuts. Like, it's wild, man. Jetpacks.
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating, and I'll be interested to see where the technology goes, because, you know, like you said, you know, this is absolutely going to be, they're going to try hard to field this for military applications for the U.S. military. I think they already are. I'm probably a little behind on the loop on that one. I'm pretty sure they're already working on a jetpack project. But yeah, you know, just to see where this technology goes is going to be interesting.
So the upcoming release of A24's Civil War during a contentious presidential election year comes amid worry about the prospect of an actual civil war. You want to know what else is interesting? Is that they changed the name of the new Captain America. Do you remember what the Captain America, the new one, the fourth one, was slated to be titled?
Yeah, it was going to originally be Captain America New World Order, and then they changed it for some reason.
Because the New World Order is the enemy in that comic.
Right. I haven't read those comics, so I can't really.
What? You don't like X-Men? Shame on you, Don. You must hang up, or you must disconnect from the stream immediately and read all 2,000 comics that are X-Men, so you can have a better understanding of racial appropriation and racism in this country currently.
So the comics
of the future.
So I don't have any more, but I don't have any anymore. But when I did read comics as a kid, most of the ones I had were actually Spider-Man. I really enjoy Marvel. I know X-Men is kind of Marvel, like it's in the same vein, but I think X-Men exists in a different universe than the Avengers. I think that's how that goes, unless they've done some Doctor Strange shit. Now they've sort of combined. I have no idea.
So if you asked, let's say 10 Americans, if they think a civil war is possible, how many of them do you think would be like, yeah, civil war is possible?
At this point, so first of all, I want to put out there, I don't trust polls. Anytime, whether it's CNN or Fox or, you know, some, you know, independent third party that don't have a political bias, anytime they're like, oh, this many Americans believe this thing. I don't actually believe those, because when you look at the statistics of
it's science, Don.
When you look at how polls are conducted, it's essentially basing off of a particular polling pool of individuals. And so let's say they polled 100 people, and say 57 of them agreed with the thing. It says, oh, 57% of Americans believe in this thing, but they're not counting for the fact, okay, well, what is the primary ideological demographic of this region? Have you compared it to other regions? Did you do a cross-country poll, or did you do a poll in a specific isolated area? So it's like the credibility of any of those polls. It's like, oh, this many people believe this thing. I don't hold that often. However, if I were to guesstimate just what the overall consensus is, just going off of the polarization that's constantly being pushed by the mainstream media, and just the general state of affairs, the divisive state of affairs also being pushed by the mainstream media, and the social engineering behavioral modification that's being pumped into society, I would probably say somewhere around 45-50% of Americans at least would think that a civil war is possible.
Within the next 10 years, they say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Time to get myself a jetpack. I can just float over and watch from abroad. It'll be like the jetpack reporter, Christoph T. Harris from the air, live streaming. And I'd still get only one person in the live stream, even though I have 100,000 followers on Facebook.
How much easier would it have been to report on the Kenosha unrest if you had a jetpack? Just fly overhead, avoid all the nonsense, just get massive.
I mean, they had drones there. I'm not going to lie. There were drones there. I always wonder what happened to all the drone footage or the security footage from the buildings that mysteriously went missing at Car Source 1 and 2. And there's a lot of, I would say, raw video that maybe was not identified from just protesters. There's thousands of people there. They burnt they burnt a big chunk, like a whole city block almost down. It was wild. Like, I don't know, man. That would have been a better position for me to be in. I can tell you that. Safer. If you called the cops, nobody was coming for you.
Right. But yeah, it just seems like, at the very least, I wouldn't necessarily say the tensions are rising when it comes to the potentiality of a civil war, but I think a lot of it, like, people are also being like, that mindset is being programmed in a way, not necessarily that people actually believe it's going to happen, but that they're being convinced that it could happen.
But why is it that they want this to happen? Like, why is it that they're trying to convince Americans that this is going to happen? Because there's a lot of Civil War propaganda that's been coming out in the last couple of years, just like articles about it, news stories about it. Now we have a movie about it that isn't by somebody we know that has good intentions of educating people about surveillance and where the way the world could go.
Right. Yeah. So I would say that it's almost as if it falls into the whole vein of trying to promote the chaotic divide and conquer, because we know for a fact, sort of going back to what I was mentioning earlier about how, the ruling class establishment, the predator class, as they should more rightly be referred to as, they don't know how to respond to peace, love, and nonviolence. It's essentially, the government is a monopoly on violence, and their only tool is a hammer. So every problem has to be a nail, and if it's not already a nail, they're going to make it a nail, sort of thing. That's why when we see all these peaceful protests, they send in their agent provocateurs and turn it into a big riot, and they'll prime everybody with the predictive programming and the emotional charges, get everybody amped up, and it makes it a lot easier to get peaceful people to turn into a riot when you have their emotions heightened, because then their prefrontal cortex is turned off and everybody's in a more primal emotional state, and things of those nature. And so I think it feeds into the agenda of just wanting to promote that mentality of just keeping things chaotic, keep people divided, keep people afraid, because we saw that during COVID. And that's one of the things that we talked a lot about during COVID, is the whole reason that so much of the COVID propaganda worked, or rather why they were able to get away with so much of the tyranny of the COVID regime, is because of the fear propaganda. Human beings are very emotional animals. And when you're able to understand emotional sciences, which is why I tell people it's so important not just to learn psychology, but to learn neuropsychology, behavioral neuropsychology, the way the brain works with cognition, as well as the nervous system, and how that works towards essentially engineering people's behavior. Because it's, believe it or not, it's actually very easy, if you understand these sciences, to manipulate whole swaths of people, much less an individual. So we saw during the COVID era this massive inoculation, to use a turn of phrase, of fear porn, constantly pushing the cases, the bodies, God, look at, the China's welding people shut, and there's bodies in the streets, and the cases, all this sort of shit.
Which those videos ended up being fraudulent, right? It was all fake. It was all propaganda.
100%. But my point is, so like all of that engineered fear, keeping people afraid. Oh, these people hate you. They want to kill grandma. Oh, they're protesting. They're just greedy. They want to kill grandma. Oh, you didn't take your shot. You're going to kill grandma. All this, nonsense, dividing people, making people afraid, because it stokes the divide and conquer. It keeps people divided against one another, rather than people realizing the real issue, the predatory, exploitative ruling class who's actually pulling all the strings.
Speaking of which, Don, if you had kids, do you think you'd have a right to know what's going on with their medical history?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it's not only a right, but sort of imperative to make sure that my child is okay and healthy, and if something's wrong, I'm able to get them the appropriate, necessary medical attention.
Okay, so the reason why I ask is, as you know, the LGBTQ organization in some ways, shapes, and forms has been hijacked by a lot of extremists. The majority of people don't act or identify as a lot of like the people that get attention, right? And this has made the news, and it's kind of interesting because I'm like, what's wrong with people? So they have a Parents' Bill of Rights that's going on and going through Washington. And the initiative 2081 is known as the Parents' Bill of Rights. It's passed with strong support in the Washington legislature on March 4th. An initiative referred to as the Parents' Bill of Rights is organizations that support LGBTQ plus speaking out. State lawmakers passed the initiative on March 4th. However, a coalition of 11 organizations are now sharing concerns about the policy. The initiative passed with strong bipartisan support in both the House and Senate. Some groups that support LGBTQ plus said they will be keeping a close eye on the negative impacts of the legislation. Basically, Initiative 2081 allows for parents to have access to records showing both what their kids are learning in school as well as their child's school records. Why would it be worrisome to the LGBTQ community for the parents to know what the hell their children are learning in school, as well as their children's school records? Now, keep in mind the schools have been getting rid of homework because they don't want the parents to know what they're learning. They don't want them to help. They say it's an unfair competitive advantage if your parents, because parents already work and then they got to help their kids with homework and they're probably working 2 jobs because of whatever.
Well, I mean, that's part of it. There have been recent studies that show that homework doesn't actually help improve the overall understanding of a subject. It's basically been shown that homework is essentially pointless. Like you think, oh, send the kids home with some homework and it'll help them understand it better, and then they'll come back and we'll learn more in school. And it's actually been shown that that's not the case. But obviously, there's more nuance to the subject.
See, I always thought it was about getting work done that you couldn't get done in school. But okay, that makes sense. But you don't think mom and dad help the kids learn? Like my parents sat down and taught me stuff.
Yeah, they always do. I had, my parents would help me with my homework when I was a kid. I'm more so just saying that like homework, the idea behind homework that it helps kids understand the subject better is sort of, bunk rather than that. But, still I'm right there with you when it comes to the whole, why would there be concerns about parents knowing what their kids are learning? I think that should be a necessity. Like parents should be informed and have an understanding of what their children are being taught, especially when we know that a lot of these public schooling systems essentially serve as nothing but indoctrination camps. And that has been the case since 1903, since Rockefeller helped fund the American Board of Education and create the standardized education system as a way of, essentially creating a working class citizens that are only educated to a certain degree. And that's a quote by one of the financial advisors, essentially talking about how the reason that the Rockefellers and some of these other robber barons were working to create this the foundation of what eventually became the U.S. education system was specifically to create a class of Americans that are just educated enough basically to do as they're told, work for the corporatists, but not educated enough to know, not men of letters, not scientists, not doctors. They list off a whole list of things that they don't want people to become.
Well, so this includes, by the way, so we're going to continue. This concludes any medical, health, or counseling records, which some people think could potentially have negative impacts on the youth. So why wouldn't you want why would the LGBTQ community want medical, health, or counseling records being disclosed to the parents? That's their kids. Like they're not adults, right. They're children. They're under 18.
So two things that I would say.
Why would the government have access, not the parents?
Right. Yeah. So two things with regard to that. So first of all, we do know that there's been this increase of schools. We saw even, not just with the, say, for example, the transgender issue where they'll help children without the knowledge of their parents, get access to hormone blockers and things of that nature. But also we saw it with the COVID shots where, they would tell kids, oh, get this COVID shot, get this flu shot. You don't need to tell your parents about it. Type of thing. And so I would say, first of all, parents absolutely need to be aware of those things. But then secondly, another aspect of it, I would say, is that it would probably be beneficial to learn more about the bill specifically, because we have seen this sort of two-sided sword where legislation is put forward and it's under the guise of one thing, but then it does another. And although I don't have a lot of expertise on the specifics of it, because I haven't, sat down and gone through all the legalese, I don't study a lot of like litigation type law related material. We have seen those things, especially with, say, for example, some of the abortion bills that are put forward, and it's under the guise of, oh, we're protecting babies. But then you actually read through the bills and you see that, oh, but even if you're raped, you're not allowed to get an abortion. Oh, even if it's a case of incest, you're not allowed to get an abortion. And we realize that it's actually more about controlling women than it is about actually protecting their health, because even in instances where your health is in danger, or you're not allowed to get one because God says so, or the Republican GOP says so, or whatever. So
because man says so. Some man somewhere thinks so.
Yeah,
right. So
so we see that sort of double-sided sword. So I would want to learn more about this legislation to see if there are any valid concerns that they would have. But at the same time, I still affirm that parents 100% should have total transparent access to everything.
Except for in the case of abuse, like if a child is in talking to a counselor about the parents abusing them, here it says the school's not required to release medical or health or mental health records to parents if they are being investigated for child abuse or neglect.
Yes, but and then, of course, that's the exception, and there's always nuance. I just mean, in general, when the parents aren't abusive, they absolutely have the right to know what their kids are being taught in school, have their medical records. Again, like I said, just to know, like, is my child okay? Like, is there something going on that I should know about? But of course,
here's what it is. According to this article, and CBS says, I believe this is CBS. Is it CBS? I believe it is, or ABC. It's one of the big news agencies out there. Claim that it's because they're worried that kids will not come forward and identify with the new pronouns at school.
And so that's when we get into the nonsense aspect of this whole thing. Is
they're furries now. They got furries now all over the place. They're like identify as a cat, and they're like licking their hands and themselves. And I don't know. I mean, I guess we live in a very cosplay world. I guess whatever you cosplay, identify as Thor or trans financial. My ones should be respected as the hundreds wherever I go. I identify as a billionaire.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, that sort of falls into the whole, nonsensical sort of debate. One of these can't even really call it a debate, but that's, for lack of a better term, that's been going on in the U.S. as of late when it comes to the whole, gender, transgender type thing. And my position is always very simple. You're a grown-ass adult. Do what you want. It's not
call yourself
my
whatever
business or anyone's business. Leave the kids the hell alone. Just
you could identify as a Palladian, then a Starseed, or Indigo Child, or whatever it is.
And my position on leaving kids alone and letting kids be kids is universal, because I've literally had people try to come at me. Well, then kids shouldn't be exposed to religion either. And I completely agree. I don't care if it's my religion, Christianity, Satanism, whatever. Like, if a child wants to learn about those subjects, let them learn about those subjects on their own, but don't force them on them. So across the board, whether it's political ideology, I don't think kids should be exposed to political ideologies. Leave them alone. A child doesn't need to be a Democrat or a Republican. A child needs to be a child and enjoy the very short, precious time that they have being a child, because guess what? Growing up sucks.
In other bizarre news dealing with the leftist extremism and outright crazy politics on the Rundown Live, Zero Hedge, Swamp Omnibus, lobbyists get millions for what they claim to be LGBTQ sex parties and electronic cattle tracking. As part of a government shutdown looms, the House Freedom Caucus has called on Republicans to oppose the Swamp Omnibus bill, criticizing it for containing a ridiculous amount of pork. The government funding package is designed to prevent partial shutdown next Friday. The House debates, and I don't know where they're getting at. This is a sensational title, but essentially the group continued, even at the face of a $34.4 trillion in national debt. The omnibus will bust the bipartisan spending caps signed into law less than a year ago and is loaded with hundreds of pages of earmarks worth of billions with a B.
But yeah, and it seems as though that every time these big spending bills come up, it's always now put in the context of a looming government shutdown, because they're always it's so ironic that it seems like both sides of the aisle are always fussing about spending up on the Hill, and yet it seems like they're all good with spending our money on warrantless surveillance. Oh, sure, blank check. Spending our money on war, kill innocent people abroad, sure, blank check. Spend our money on absolute nonsense. You remember that time Rand Paul went up there and just gave a whole like PowerPoints for days
of just random stuff. Here, check this out. Check this out real quick. The agreement directs the department to continue to provide electric tags related to infrastructure needed to comply with federal animal disease traceability, and including no less than $15 million for electronic identification tags and related infrastructure needed for stakeholders to comply with proposed rule. Use of electronic identification ear tags as official identification in cattle and bison.
Right. Which, I mean,
$15 million to put tags?
Right.
Electronic tags?
Yeah, it just seems like there's probably a cheaper way to do that. And that's sort of the point I was getting to when it comes to so many of these omnibus bills is one, just the absurd amount of useless spending that continues to add to our mounting unsustainable national debt. And then just the ridiculous amount of shit that we don't need to be spending that much money on. I know I'm not a cattle farmer by any stretch, but I'm pretty sure there's cheaper ways to do that rather than allocating millions and millions of dollars.
There is a $1 million earmark in the omnibus bill for LGBTQ center where people have been having BDSM sex parties at. After Libs of TikTok and I exposed, this is Thomas Massey, the earmark sponsor wanted to remove it from the bill. There's just one problem. It's stuck in the bill, and we're voting on this week. John Fetterman from Pennsylvania has rescinded his support to use taxpayer funds for the LGBTQ Center, that's a leftist, which hosts sex parties after Libs of TikTok expose. Well, it looks like that wasn't a sensational title. Man, you just don't know nowadays. Those titles, they're just getting $1 million for BDSM parties, I guess. There are places that host BDSM parties. Like, can we get $1 million towards counter propaganda for the Rundown Live, Don? Like, why wouldn't that be a bad investment? To have independent news with raw journalists there to provide on-the-ground coverage that is good and healthy for you guys. No, we can't get government money for that. We got to rely on you guys, the listeners, to support us. Go to the rundownlive.com and donate $2 or $3 or buy a shirt or something, But here they're just giving out $1 million to gay clubs where they're having swinger BDSM parties. I didn't really know what BDSM is until I had a conversation with someone about that, and I was like, holy cow. Another reporter. I didn't know like people like to get like punished and hurt and whipped and stuff, and that's what that is.
People are into some interesting things, but as I said, if you're an adult, get consent and do whatever the hell you want as long as you have consent. Nobody else's business if you get freaky deaky like that, man. But allocating government money towards it is a little far beyond the Rubicon. It's just makes no sense.
I'm telling you, the older I get, the closer I get to checking out, the more I'm like, I don't know about the children. What's going to go on there? What's going on there? And, there was an article you sent me about Russia and VPN. Do you guys out there know what VPN is for the listeners? It's a virtual private network. And once upon a time, before it was even popular, the Rundown Live was sponsored by one of the largest VPNs that it's now available. They kind of, once we got in the fake news, not fake news, what is it? Once they came after everyone for Russian collusion, they started censoring, and we were on a list of censored websites, not because we, aggregated misinformation, but because we were accurate. They kind of were like, oh, well, can you remove the link on your website? It's hindering our web analytics, and that's private internet access. So VPN, what it does is prevents the government from tracking what you do online and forces them to go and legally get a warrant in order to collect any metadata on you. And we used private internet access. They worked with us for many years. We were one of the first people to promote it. They were cool. Now they're huge, and they're like, we don't need you, which we're okay with. It is what it is. We didn't make a whole lot of money, but it was another source of revenue where we were actually, making things happen. Like YouTube.
Indeed. I mean, there are, I do see some of the other creators I follow, even on YouTube. They're sponsored by another company called ExpressVPN. Maybe you should reach out to them. Maybe they'll be okay to jump on Team TRL.
But the point is Russia has rolled out a VPN ban nationwide, curbing free speech and privacy.
Yeah, so this is one of those things that I had brought up a little bit earlier, and if we could put it up on the screen for the folks. So this is one of those things that just sort of counters the narrative that certain demographic of individuals, since I can't really think of another word for it, a certain group of folks who are opposed to the U.S. empire that promote this idea of the essentially Russia, China, or maybe even just the BRICS bloc sort of multipolarity as this concept of, freeing the world from the destructive power, from the destructive forces of the U.S. empire's led unipolar hegemony, which absolutely needs to happen. I mean, the U.S. empire has, without a doubt, the most damaging and destructive force on this planet. I just don't think switching out one tyrant for another is the way to go. Obviously, it's, we see in the U.S., it's like the U.S. is the microcosm for this greater unipolar versus multipolar false dichotomy macrocosm sort of way. And, like there's this idea like, oh, U.S. and U.K. bad, but Putin and China, they got the right idea. And it's like, I don't know about that, Chief. That seems a little off the mark. And so when it comes to things like this, it sort of demonstrates, as I mentioned earlier. So we still see, despite the arguments made in favor of the whole unipolar BRICS block of nations taking over the world order, we see them in China. We see them in Russia, primarily those two, but also some of their allies, Iran, India, South Africa, Brazil, implementing VPN bans, implementing other legislation, blocking, just privacy, implementing legislation, promoting censorship, implementing things like your digital currencies, CBDCs, like the digital IDs, all in line with the Agenda 2030 narrative, showing that whether we're talking about the Western U.S. empire unipolar world order or the Eastern BRICS nations bloc multipolar world order, it's all serving the new world order ideology, Agenda 2030 sort of greater reset.
World Economic Forum trash. Yeah,
precisely.
It's not like they're going to the local community and saying what's best for you and what changes can we make. It's like, oh, this is what we're going to do in your SOL. But if you want to give some recommendations, we may consider it. And we're going to lobby politicians on both sides. Speaking of crazy Russian news, this one's right up there. Have you seen this story? Russians plan to put a nuclear power plant on the moon. Russia is considering a nuclear power plant installation on the moon starting by 2033. In our lifetime, Don, we're going to see people hanging out at the moon. We're going to go to the moon bar and hang out, and we're going to sing songs at some kind of like piano bar on the moon. The restaurant, maybe I'll open a restaurant there, call it the restaurant at the end of the universe. We'll hang out and we'll have like a Zaphod Beeblebrox, two-headed, three-legged dude up there hanging out, and we'll have Ford Prefect and everyone else. We'll have a little gimmick going on, selling gargle blasters, all that jazz.
Right. Yeah, so I was going through the news earlier today, just looking for interesting stories for us to discuss tonight, and this just happened to come across my radar, and I thought it was just perfect because it fits right into a lot of the stuff we talked about. And I also just thought it was just relatively interesting, this concept that, as you mentioned, in our lifetime, like 2033, 2035, that Russia and China, as it mentions later in the article, like they're working, congruently on this project to try to put a nuclear power plant on the moon, essentially going into talking about the possibility of colonizing the moon, putting people on the moon, sort of getting, off terrestrial sort of colonization. So like human beings going to the moon and things of that nature, putting colonies on the moon, things like that. And essentially talking about it's not feasible given the moon's distance from the sun, even though, it's still relatively close to the earth. It's just there's not enough light from the sun for solar power, as well as a number of other challenges using solar power for that kind of a project. So there's just also, other issues with it. But essentially that nuclear power plants, which admittedly, when it comes to all of our potential like forms of producing energy, either the whole green wind turbines and solar power and all of that versus the petroleum based, disasters that we've seen petroleum based energy create, oil, things of that nature. Nuclear is absolutely the provable safest option that we know of is currently on the market. I still advocate that there's suppressed technology that we don't know about. I talk a lot about Nikola Tesla and whether or not he was able to develop what's known as 0-point energy or free energy type of devices and things of that. It's a different conversation for a different day. But as far as what we do know works and what we do currently utilize, nuclear is definitely the cleanest and safest compared to, as well as cleanest and safest in addition to actually being able to produce the amount of power necessary to do things that we need it to do compared to petroleum or the green side of renewables, things of that nature. So talking about putting a nuclear power plant on the moon to power a colony of people that would eventually go up there, which I find.
Well, this goes into moon wars. Are we going to be battling over who owns what part of the moon? Like, is there a map out there of who owns what part of the moon? Or do we own it because we were the first people there? By we, I mean the United States. Of that, because we are allegedly there. Because isn't that how it worked back in the day? You just drop your little plaque, and that was your place until somebody came and took it, or you died. Like, so how does that work with the moon? Like, does somebody actually own the moon? And is your name Rothschild? Because I hope not.
Oh yeah, certainly hope not.
Somebody else? Anybody else? I don't care what the last name is.
I would sort of think that perhaps the moon is treated similar to how we treat Antarctica here on Earth. It's just sort of an agreement between nations, even if you're rivals like the US and Russia, like everybody just sort of in agreement over this one thing, which also, makes you go, but in agreement.
I got an answer, by the way, on the moon.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
While the United States astronauts were the first to visit the moon, this does not mean the United States owns it. In fact, under the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, what? I never heard of the Outer Space Treaty. And here I am, a MUFON certified UFO investigator. Like, no country has a unique ownership in the moon, and all nations are accorded equal rights and access. So does that mean you could fly to the moon and set stakes? It would be like, this country's called the Rundown Live, and we're going to have a gold and silverback currency, and, we're going to have our little restaurant there and museum, and we can start open up a little space archaeology, place where people do space archaeology,
Set up your own country on the moon, call it Kristanistan.
Kristanistan?
Yeah.
Nah, that's a horrible name.
I don't know. Something, man. But yeah, so it is, quite similar to what I figured it would be, similar to the way we treat Antarctica here on Earth, where everybody's just mutually in agreement, like, no one country owns this one particular swath of land type of deal. So that's interesting.
So PBS has this interesting on who owns the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So this is published July 1st, 2019. If you want to own a plot of lunar land, there are websites that will sell you one.
Really?
Did you know that? So who owns the moon?
Yeah, because that's a really good question now, because now if you can sell moon land, clearly that implies ownership.
Like, what the hell if you go there and you're like, yeah, I want my 40 acres of moon, and you're local. Do you own the mineral rights then?
Right.
Like, you dig and all of a sudden there's gold. Is Newt Gingrich going to come over with his meteor colony and hire, Pinkerton to come kill you in your little moon base that you built?
Right. It'll be the gold wars all over again.
So who owns the moon anyways? About 5 years ago, Sam Grubbs of Leicester, New England, got a birthday gift from a colleague. It came in plain brown cardboard box, but on the front of it said 1 acre of land on the moon. Grubbs opened the box, and inside was a certificate, lunar deed. This document represents a transfer of 1 acre of land on the surface of the Earth's moon from Dennis M. Hope. Grubbs read, the land had been sold by a man named Dennis Hope, the alleged owner of the entire moon. And so Grubbs wondered, who's Dennis Hope, and how did he become the owner of the moon? I tracked down Hope's real estate company. It's called the Lunar Embassy and says it's the world's top seller of land on the moon. Why does it say that? Well, in 1980, Hope sent a letter to the United Nations saying he was now the owner of the moon. The UN never responded, and so Hope just started selling land. Man, you would have thought that the Rothschilds would have been on that.
No kidding. I mean,
yeah, or Al Gore.
Did the guy get his idea from one of those Ethiopian princes?
I don't know. It sounds something straight out of the climate change conspiracy. Completely trash. So send $24.99 to the Lunar Embassy, and it will send you a certificate for 1 acre. Chris Lamar, CEO of Lunar Embassy and acting president of the galactic government, said some people have bought a lot more than 1 acre. They've paid over $25,000 for city-sized plots to these people.
Okay, so first of all, that's a lot to take in. So first of all, galactic government.
PBS? Well, I got to put this on the screen for our listeners.
Yeah.
I'm not pulling this out of my ass. I mean, there's times I joke. This is not a joke.
We'll have it up momentarily, but yeah. So like I said, there's a lot to unpack there. Okay, so first of all, galactic government. What the hell?
I thought that was, where's the Galactic Federation of Light? That's what the Starseeds say are running shit.
Yeah, and secondly, like, man, that's just wow, the kind of shit that people can get away with. Who's paying? Was it $200,000 or plus more?
$25,000.
Okay, $25,000. Okay, yeah. So for like city-sized plots of land on the moon, like. First of all, why would you pay that much for somewhere you're probably not going to go? And if you do plan to go, how the hell do you plan to get there? It opens up a whole different question. Not to mention a city-sized plot would imply that you have plans for that involves other people. So it opens more questions.
It's like Elon Musk about a 25K place. He's like, oh, he's drunk. He's drunk on Facebook or on Twitter. And he's like, buy lunar properties. Okay, all right. What's $25,000? He's got $200 billion. It's like buying a bubble gum, you know.
Pretty much.
Lamar says it's the cheapest property in the whole solar system. Cheap, maybe, but is it fair and legally possible to own a piece of the moon? Quote, no, said Claire Finkelstein, a law professor at the University of Pennsylvania who works on international law. I showed her the Lunar Embassy website and she was horrified. This is a very strange claim, Finkelstein said. They can't be anything but fraudulent.
Right.
Most space law experts agree that Finkelstein cited the Article 2 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claims of sovereignty, by means of use of occupation, or by any other means. Basically, the treaty says space belongs to everyone. It's a global commons. And because governments can't control land on the moon, individuals can't own land on the moon. You need a government to recognize land ownership. So basically, you just go. So what happens if you go there and you just claim it? You just claim it's yours, and people have to take your word for it until somebody rolls over in little like space jet or space car or space tank and takes it from you, huh?
I mean, it sounds like that would be the case. Space colonialism. It doesn't matter if somebody says. It doesn't matter if it's already somebody's. I'm going to come there and plant my flag and say it's mine.
Oh, let's take a look at this. Here it is, the Lunar Embassy. Out of all the crap that we've seen in scams and people are making money off of. Let's see.
Hell?
There it is for sale. Lunar Embassy selling extraterrestrial real estate since 1980.
That's what we should do. We should be lunar real estate agents. Like people can make money off this trash, but we can barely afford to fund this show. What the hell?
Wait. It's been featured on NBC News, Conan, Howard Stern, Time Magazine, Fox News, Inside Edition, MSNBC, Los Angeles Times, and CNN. Notice none of those say Alex Jones.
Right. That's hilarious, though.
It's been featured on all those different stations. For sale, buy land on the moon, buy land on Mars, buy land on Mercury, buy land on Venus.
Wow.
I don't know, Don. Doesn't look like Somebody you can buy Pluto in its entirety. Guess how much if you want to just buy all of Pluto? $250,000 you can own Pluto, allegedly.
Oh man, it's like I said, it's
what happens if you get the Pluto? You buy it, or let's say it's legit. Let's say you buy it for $250K. You get there, and there you find out that there's real aliens there, and it's like infested with giant cockroaches or some shit. You're like,
man.
Screw this. This would suck.
Helldivers becomes real, man.
Starship Troopers,
Yeah. Oh my god, dude.
The galactic government.
I'll tell you, if people fall for that, look, I've got some beachfront property in New Jersey. I'm going to sell them. It's ridiculous.
Well, what's that? See, this is what I always. Here it is: the Galactic Federation of Light with the demonic Ashtar. Because Ashtar is a demon, actually. But here they even have a website, the Galactic Federation of Light. They're allegedly the ones running the intergalactic agencies, light workers.
Oh my goodness.
Starseed. Oh, look at Starseed gear. You can buy Starseed gear.
Shit's such a scam.
What are you talking about? They got Metatron's cube, the scribe of God. Look at that. You can get the shirt with Metatron's cube. You're ruining their vibration, bro.
This sort of shit kind of makes me speechless. Like, I don't think there's anything constructive I can add to it other than just to call it what it is. Absolutely ridiculous. And it baffles me that this sort of stuff is popular. Like it blows up.
But it's always some half-dressed girl that's barely wearing clothes and is ditzy as fuck, and she's like, "Oh, I feel different, so I'm trans-alien."
Right. Well, that's how they sell it. That's
I'm
how
just saying. I'm not saying that there aren't star seeds, by the way.
Right.
I don't know, but I'm just saying this is probably not it.
Right. Yeah. It's like the whole. It's just the issue with the New Age movement pushing into the internet and just like so much nonsense flooding the web, subtracting away from actual spiritual wisdom, actual esoteric knowledge, and real things that people really need to be learning about. And instead, it's this sort of stuff sort of completely overshadows it.
And people believe this wholeheartedly, like as much as I believe in God or anything else, and they have the right to. But the Galactic Federation of Light, they claim, was founded 4.5 million years ago to prevent interdimensional dark forces from dominating and exploiting the galaxy. At the present, there are over 200,000 member star nations, confederations of unions. Approximately 40% are humanoids, and the rest are varied forms of sentient beings. Most members of the Galactic Federation are fully conscious beings. There is a Galactic Federation in each of the inhabited galaxies of our universe, according to Robert Space Industries, which is probably some fake stuff.
Right. Yeah, exactly. like right up there with the whole lunar real estate thing, right?
Well, okay. Do you remember? Okay, first of all, what was it? Israel defense. What was that guy's name? Defense Forces, UFO. What was it? There you go. How Israel Air Force. Okay, former Israel Space Security Chief. Here it is.
Yeah, all right. I remember the
former Israelis. Do we have it on the screen? We do not. Yes. We're going to go ahead and put this on the screen.
It's up on the screen. I see it.
Okay. Former Israeli space security chief says extraterrestrials exist and Trump knows about it.
So this is one of those things that so because it is like it, in my opinion, could be one of two things. One, it's either legitimate because it's coming from an individual who would know, or it's deliberate disinformation because it's coming from an individual within that sector of government who is in a position of, if they come out with this sort of stuff, it's either deliberate fake news, misdirection, psyop, limited hangout, or an actual whistleblower. Honestly, I don't know.
All I'm going to say is it matches a lot of what William Cooper said in his indictment of MJ-12. There is an agreement between the United States government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here, he said. Esht added that the President Donald Trump was aware of the extraterrestrials' existence and had been on the verge of revealing information, but was asked not to in order to prevent mass hysteria. They have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are. Esch said, referring to the Galactic Federation. There it is. Here's the Galactic Federation. What the hell is a Galactic Federation? Do they have a website? We were just at the Galactic Federation of Light.
Right. So I think so when it comes to that, so like the whole Galactic Federation of Light starseed shit seems like it's sort of like an offshoot, like a fictional offshoot of what's actually been reported by those kind of individuals, by people like William Cooper in the indictment of MJ-12, and people, government and military individuals who have come out and essentially said that there's some sort of treaty between actual like global leaders and extraterrestrials.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
That's a common thing. This is not the first time. Like with the when this story came out a couple years ago, this is not the first time that was mentioned. It's been talked about for a number of decades. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. It could be
really space security. Talking Galactic Federation, Don.
Yeah. So it could be disinformation. It's likely disinformation. I just think it's interesting that that's a conversation that's actually being had in mainstream news, NBC News, from a former space security chief of a, can't call it a nation because it's not an illegal colony, but regardless, a prominent government on Earth individual.
Leave Israel alone, Don.
Fuck Israel.
Oh, man, that sounds mean.
It is mean.
Government in general,
Yeah, fuck government in general. I'm with you, brother.
Well, like it's for a nation that was that Germany attempted to like massacre.
Yeah,
they're now massacring Hamas, and it's like I don't know.
Well, not just Hamas, like innocent Palestinians in general. I mean, Hamas is only one small aspect of the overall Palestinian people, and we only have like 2 minutes before wrap, so we don't really have time to get into that, but we've covered it on previous episodes before. But just when it comes to the whole extraterrestrial thing, like, so we've had individuals from this former space security chief from Israel. There have been some that have come forward from Russia, from the UK, the United States. So I'm not sure. Like I said, someone in those positions, it could easily be deliberate disinformation. Or
there's a Galactic Federation of Light, and I believe it, Don. Commander Ashtar is going to come down in his like intergalactic spaceship and serve us Scargo blasters, and we're going to have a good old time. And he's going to take us to a restaurant at the end of the universe so we can hang out with Ford Prefect and Zaphod Beeblebrox and Starship Enterprise, and maybe Doctor Who will be there too.
Who knows?
That's where it is.
Right.
All right, guys, you're listening to the Rundown Live on KGRADB.com. I'm your host, Chris Don. Tomorrow, do we have guests? Do we have?
Yes, we have Jason Bassler and Matt Agarist with the Free Thought Project are going to be joining us. Not sure what we're going to be talking about yet, but we've been trying to set up this interview because our producer Bill has been asking us to do that, and I was finally able to get everybody to agree on a time. So they'll be joining us tomorrow.
This Sunday, special episode of the Rundown Live, we'll be doing talking Kenosha and the Kenosha unrest. We want your calls. 1-855-472-5483 will be the number. 1-855-472-5483. Follow us on Rumble. Follow us on KGRADB. Visit the Rundown Live. Support us. Pick up a shirt. We need your help. We're 100% listener funded. And if you don't know, PM us. Don and I are very personable. And somebody in the chat had to know, Don, do you have a kid?
No, I do not.
That you know of?
That I know, I'm sure.
Okie dokie, just making sure. All right, guys, have a good night. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Do you come to Milwaukee often?
Actually, it's pronounced Milwaukee, which is Algonquin for the good land.
She fucking comes walking in. Yeah, she goes to those Bilderberg meetings, where they dress up like pheasants and they fuck each other, right? Sacrifice some employee from a Best Buy. Fight over his name tag for a trophy.
You heard it here first.
You're listening to The Rundown Live with Kriston Harris and Mike McChesney. The destroyer of fake news.
I think one of the most interesting aspects of Milwaukee is the fact that